So you might not be aware, but FreeCAD's actually been in development for almost 18 years and publicly announced for over 15. And any application that's been in active development for that long is going to get big, and it's going to have a lot of things that are either poorly documented or just sort of taken for granted or kind of fall out of favor. I wouldn't call any of the things I'm going to show in this video Easter eggs. Maybe they're undocumented features or just, I don't know, pro tips. I call them damn handy. So here's 5 damn handy things that might help you out. So this is the start page that launches when you first start up FreeCAD. And there's a recent files list here. And if you hover over one of these items in the list, you'll see on the right side that it shows some meta information, including the location of the file, the creation date, and the last time it was updated. But some files, if you hover over them, will actually give a little thumbnail showing the contents of the file. But the files that you create won't do that automatically unless you've set up your preferences correctly. So go into Edit, Preferences, switch to the Document tab, and you'll see there's an option here to save thumbnail to project when saving. Make sure that that's turned on. Then when you save the file, it'll create a thumbnail image, and then it'll be accessible in this browser here. I'm going to switch over to version 18 and show the start page here. On version 18, the start page is undergoing a pretty massive change, and there's now going to be tiles here for all the recent files list, and so that those thumbnail views are going to be even more prominent. Now, and then when you hover over the tile, you'll see that creation information, or that meta information about creation and modified date. Unfortunately, this view lost the full file name, and it's actually pretty difficult to to see where this file is stored on the hard drive. The only way that I've found to do that is to go up under the File, Recent Files list, and then if you hover over the item in the Files list, there's the full path name or path to the file. And it'd be really nice to be able to copy that full path, so if you want to upload it to the forum or to some online service, it's just pasting that in. So I'd really like to see that come back in this meta information, and maybe even some way to copy it to the clipboard. So I really like the fact that they're using these thumbnails more, and like where they're going with this start workbench. One thing that I think would be nice feature to add would be an improved file open dialog. So when you open up the file dialog and start browsing for files here, it'd be nice that if I clicked on this, that there was a thumbnail view where I could see the contents of the file right there. The problem is that the files roll out of your recent files list, and so if I go to try to find a file that I opened 9 months ago, it's not going to be in the files list. So I'm going to be back to browsing it in the file manager or through the file open dialog, but there's no way to see the thumbnail, which would be the most useful thing for locating it. As it is right now, you have to open it up fully in the GUI, and sometimes those files get big and take quite a while to load. Okay, we're in the Sketcher, and I could probably do an entire video on pro tips in the Sketcher. There's just a lot of really cool features in here that I don't think get used anywhere near enough, and things that have been around for a long time that, long-time users, some of these I just found myself recently, even though they've been in there for a long time. Okay, one of those is how the Sketcher uses selection order for what you use. My normal workflow would be to select a number of different pieces of geometry and then apply a constraint to them like that. And you'll see that my cursor returned to the normal default state. However, you can use the selection order in a better way by first selecting the constraint, and then selecting the geometry. And you see that my cursor changed to the horizontal constraint, and now when I click on the element, it applies the constraint, but it leaves the cursor in this mode, so I can continue to select other elements. That works for other things as well, like setting coincident constraints. So you can set a point and another point. It'll set those elements but stay in this mode, and I can just kind of work my way around. It's really nice, very fast way to adjust these things. Now, it's for some elements, you know, if I was setting something like a circle, this one circle will add 3 degrees of freedom to the drawing. 1 degree for the diameter or the radius, and 2 for the horizontal and vertical positions. So I would set 3 constraints on that to fully lock the circle. However, you can just select it and then use this block constraint right there, and now that you see that my degrees of freedom went from 13 to 10. And you know, the diameter will no longer move and the position will no longer move. That's really handy, especially if you're working with splines that have a lot of control points on them, and you're not so, you know, they're not dimensional constraints or anything like that. You just want to lock the whole thing in one go. So as you're working on your sketches and applying your constraints, things can get kind of cluttered here, and the constraints can kind of get in the way and make it difficult. And there's a tool here, and it says switch the selected constraints to, or the view to, the other virtual space. And that was confusing to me the first time around, but after playing with it, all it does is kind of hides the constraint. So if I select them and hit the button, it just moves them out of the way, and I can continue to select them. And then if I hit the button again, they come back. Now you'll see that what happened here is I've got the block constraint on, and when I switch, the 2 that I hid come back and the block went away. So this actually is appropriately named or labeled. You have 2 kind of workspaces that are collecting the constraints, and you can display the constraints in either one. So as I toggle this button, I'm switching between the 2 workspaces that hold the constraints. In the first case, so let me put these back. This now would be where I started right here, and if I toggle, none of the constraints show because there's nothing moved into this workspace now, and they're all over here. And so you can just move them one at a time, and or multiple select them, and then you can kind of clean up your view that way, which is a convenience feature, but very nice. Now, one thing to keep in mind about these alternate workspaces is there's really no indicator on here of where where the whether you have constraints in the other workspace or not. Your constraint list is still showing them all, but if I were to save this document now and come back in months later and open up the sketch, it's still going to be in this state with none of the constraints showing in the 3D window. And it might be confusing to me, unless I understand that those constraints can be in the other virtual space. All right, this next one might not be of use to you unless you write macros or do some development, but it's really a handy feature and probably worth knowing about. Click on the View Toolbars menu, View Panels, and you'll see that there's a panel for the Selection View, which is turned off by default. Turning it on gives us a panel here, and it reflects what is currently selected either in the tree or in the 3D view. So selecting my house object in the tree, you'll see that the selection view shows unnamed.house. If I select the top face, I've got face 5 here. Well, that's cool, but I could also get the same thing by just looking at the status bar as I hover over things, and I could figure out that this is face 9 without actually selecting it. But what the selection view does is gives you a couple more tools. So once it's selected, if I right click on this and say to Python console, you see that it ran a couple commands over here. And what it did was it created 3 objects for me and set references to the underlying elements of my object. So I now have this obj object, obj, and I can press the period, and I'm browsing the properties of this object. So I could get .shape, .volume, and I can see what the volume of my house object is. Likewise, I could just get face 5 and to Python console, and now that's going to be ELT dot area, and I can see the area of that face. Really a nice way to explore the objects and a quick way to get a reference to them if you need to do something like that. And it works all the way down to a vertex level or anything that you can select. Super cool feature. All right, this next one really isn't any kind of an Easter egg. It's been there all along, and I talked about this briefly in an earlier video, and it's the Save Picture tool. I just don't think enough people appreciate what this is good for, and so I'm going to cover it again here. This does is it saves a picture of the current view, and there's an extended button here which gives you access to a few more options. For instance, I can set the specific size that I want or to the current screen, and then I can set the aspect ratio. But it's this background transparent, and you can use the current color scheme for FreeCAD's background. You can set white, black, or transparent, and then give a file name and save it, and it will save the image out for you. The really nice thing is if you're building a web page or something like that where you need transparency, you can grab that directly from the image. It'll take out the placement cube and the indicator, and you know it's just a great way of building an image with a transparent layer for a website or something like that. The only feature that I would really like to see added to this would be when you save the file name, if it took the complete file path and name and added it to the clipboard, then it would be very easy to come in here, take that screenshot, jump back over to the forum to upload an image and paste in the path to the file to upload, and it's all done in one shot. Usually if I'm creating an image for some purpose, I either want to open it up in GIMP to edit it further, or I want to upload it so I can get a link to it, or I want to send it to the forum or something like that. So just copying it, the full file path to the clipboard right there would be just an awesome feature as well. Okay, another kind of pro tip here is has to do with the context menus, what you get in the right clicking on things. And if I'm in the part design workbench, you'll see if I right click here, I have this small set of items for moving the tip and editing the pad and so forth, and a couple that are kind of universal throughout FreeCAD. But part design is fairly aggressive in how it changes the behavior of this context menu. So if I switch over to the part workbench and do the same thing, right click on it, you'll see that I have a much larger menu of options here, including the ability to set the random color on the part and change its appearance and so forth. In fact, there's 3 different places at least where you can set the color of the part. Now, if I add a regular part object here, I'm going to hide my body object. And if I right-click on this cube, I've got the random color and appearance, but I've also got this option here for set colors. And this one's just a little bit different. If you go into this, and then you see as I'm selecting faces here, they're getting added to a list. and I can control select to get multiple, and then click on the color selector, and you'll see that I'm putting colors on just one or two faces of the object. So that can be really handy if you just want to call out a face or give a focus to it for one reason or another. Now if I hide my cube and turn on my body, and I'm still in the part workbench, you'll see that if I right click on it, I don't have that option for set colors here. Nor do I have it if I right click on the underlying pad. This is going to change in version 18. You'll be able to do set colors for individual faces of an object in version 18. Let me switch over to that. So I've opened up that same project in version 18, and you'll see that I'm sitting on the part design workbench. And now if I right click on the body, you'll see I have basically the same menu as before, but I do have the random color option and the appearance option. So I can now change the appearance of the object as a whole. And if I right click on the tip object underneath the body, I can do the set colors and again select individual faces and apply a color to it. Now you got to remember that you're setting these face colors on the tip of the body. So if I apply additional features like a fillet like this, you'll see that already my colors got lost. They're still here on the underlying pad, but they're not on the fillet. So you're probably going to want to set face colors as the last step in the process. Before I go, I'm going to point out one thing which is not a feature, or not an Easter egg, it's really an anti-Easter egg because it's something absolutely everybody in the FreeCAD community either already knows or should know, and that's the Copy to Clipboard button. If you go to Help About, you'll get the Help dialog, you copy to Clipboard, and all of this information, plus a lot more information, is added directly to your clipboard so you can paste it into a forum post, and you're going to get much better support from the people there if you tell them what version of FreeCAD you're running. And the latest, quote, the latest is not a version. What we actually need is the information that's contained in here. So everybody already knows that because it's everywhere. It's all over the forum, and you only got to read the forum about 5 minutes to see people posting this information. And if you don't post it, you're probably going to catch a lot of hell, and you're probably going to deserve it. Anyway, there's a couple little things, little tips to get you going. If you are new to FreeCAD and struggling, please check out my book, FreeCAD for Inventors, available on Amazon and Kobo, and we'll see if we can help you out one way or the other. All right, if you got other Easter eggs, please leave comments below. Love to hear them. Thank you.